Am I the a-hole for not wanting my mom's boyfriend anywhere near my vagina? Hey everyone. I'm really stuck in a weird and kinda gross situation right now. I'm 18 female, finishing up high school, and still living with my mom 30 for female. So, a few months ago, my mom started dating this new guy who's 50. Okay, age gap weirdness aside, things got super awkward for me personally. About 3 months ago, my period started getting super bad. Like, talking unusually heavy bleeding and major cramps and just a lot of pain that I've never dealt with before. Obviously, I was like, okay, time to see a gynecologist, because I haven't been to one since I was 15, and this isn't something to mess around with. Also, it's time to get a routine pelvic exam anyway. I told my mom, thinking she'd be supportive and help me make an appointment. We live in a pretty remote rural area right now. My high school has literally like 50 students, and it's like an hour drive to the nearest urgent care even. Also, the insurance I'm on sucks, and I need her to help me with the copay. But nope. The next day, she's like, guess what? My boyfriend can do your checkup. Yeah, turns out he USED to be a board-certified gynecologist, but got his license yanked away a few years back. And why does she want him to do it? To save money on the copay since our insurance kinda sucks, and to avoid driving 2 hours to see a doctor in town. Now, let me be clear, this guy gives me the major creeps. He's done stuff like not knocking before entering my room, making weird jokes that are definitely not okay, and just giving me those vibes that scream, stay away. So, the thought of him being all up in my business for a pelvic exam? Hell no. When I said as much to my mom, explaining there's no way I'm letting her boyfriend anywhere near me like that, she lost it. She said I was being insulting, assuming the worst about her BF, and that I had hurt his feelings by suggesting he couldn't be trusted. She said I was essentially implying he's a pervert. It ended with her saying I was grounded for even thinking he was some sort of creep. So, here I am feeling stuck and kind of violated by the mere suggestion and punished on top of that. Am I the a-hole for standing my ground and not wanting her boyfriend to do the exam update? So I get home from school today, and my mom is waiting in the living room for me sobbing. Her boyfriend, the creep, is standing right there next to her. For background, for the past 2 years she's been a really religious, born-again Christian type. No boys, curfew, the whole 9 yards. I've never had sex or had a boyfriend. So in between sobs, she tells me the creep talked to her today and told her that based on my symptoms, heavy bleeding and period cramps, and my disrespectful behavior, he's sure that it's from having sex. Not even an STD, but from having intercourse that was so intense it injured my insides. I've literally never heard of this, and I looked it up later, and it's not even a fucking thing. Meanwhile, the creep is sitting there mostly silent, nodding along with what my mom is saying. I tried to get a word in, but that's when the creep started on me, telling me don't even bother denying it. I've been a gynecologist for over a decade. I know this when I see it, yada yada yada. My mom then starts yelling at me like, how could you do this to me, and so on and so forth. She's convinced I've been going out and having sex with boys from school, when I've literally just been seeing the 2 or 3 friends I have. So then they explain that they decided to gather some consequences for what I allegedly did. That I'm grounded. They're going to switch out my iPhone for a dumb phone, so I can't use social media. I'm not allowed out to see my friends. And this is the forking crazy bit. The creep is going to perform a weekly purity test invasive vaginal exam to make sure that I'm not actively having sex until they can trust me again. And the first one is gonna be this weekend. I'm totally forking lost here. Obviously, I'm not going through with this, but I have no money at all, and nowhere I can stay even for one night. I'm leaning on making up some excuse to avoid the purity thing and keep my smartphone until I can sort something out. Any other ideas are appreciated. Am I the a-hole for refusing to allow my daughter around my brother-in-law for something he did years ago and leaving my husband because of it? Back when my brother-in-law was 28, he had a relationship with a 15-year-old girl. He ended up in prison for 12 years on kidnapping and rape charges. He just got out 2 years ago and moved back to our home state 3 months back. Now, my husband and I have a 13, almost 14-year-old daughter, his stepdaughter, technically, and I absolutely refuse to allow my brother-in-law around her. Everyone in the family is extremely pissed at me because he did his time and paid his dues, and have tried convincing me several times that what my brother-in-law did was a one-time thing, and that since my brother-in-law is mentally delayed due to childhood trauma, that he really didn't understand that what he did was wrong because mentally, he was on the same page as the 15-year-old girl. I refuse to buy into the excuses and have stood firm behind not allowing this man near my kid. I don't care if he is reformed and found Jesus. I don't care if he openly admits it was a mistake and is apologetic. He still raped a kid who is close in age to my daughter. Well, yesterday the family called us and said they needed to have a family discussion and asked to come over, which I allowed. My mother-in-law, father-in-law, and sister-in-law were all here and said that our niece's 12th birthday is coming up next week and that they want us to attend, but said that brother-in-law would be there. They asked that I put up with it for a few hours for my niece's sake and said we will all make sure that John isn't around your daughter. We will pay close attention and basically begged me to just put it behind me for just a few hours. I said absolutely not. They all have this belief that he is reformed anyhow. So I don't trust them to keep an eye on my kid because they all think he's cured and wouldn't do that to family. They left pissed off anyways. Well, I walked by the bathroom last night and heard my husband crying. I knocked on the door and found him sitting on the edge of the tub. He unleashed a world of hurt on me, saying he is fucking sick of being caught in the middle of all this bullshit and feels like I am making him choose between his entire family and me because his brother will be at all events from this point forward, so he knows that he won't be able to go because of it. He said that he is pissed at all of us and is starting to hate us all because we won't shut the fuck up and stop giving him ultimatums. I haven't given him any. I simply walked out and went to my mother's with my kid. I know he's hurt right now, but I will never tolerate the lack of concern for my own child after what that man did. Am I wrong here?
Am I the a-hole for going no contact after my dad stole why baby shower gifts? This happened around 2 years ago, but I've recently been thinking about it because every so often, I get the "but he's still your dad" comment every time the subject comes up, and today, it happened again. When I 26 female was 18, I went no contact with my parents for a little over 5 years. Both of my parents are toxic, but my father was a bit worse. To put things in perspective, in the middle child, yet still am the only one to have never gone on a family vacation, because I just wasn't ever considered family the way my siblings were. I spent most of my adulthood wondering why I wasn't good enough. Still, I always yearned for a dad and a mom. 2.5 years ago, I was pregnant and just getting out of an abusive relationship. I was isolated from everyone, even friends. After going to therapy and working on my mental health, I decided I needed to establish a support system for myself and my baby. In hopes that they had changed, I reached out to both my parents. They had finally separated during my period of no contact, so they were living separately. My mom lived in a different state, so she wasn't able to help much. My parents seemed thrilled at the idea of having another grandchild and seemed really supportive at first. My dad was dating a new woman and I thought she was really sweet at first, but then she got really controlling and manipulative really quickly. I'd see her call my teenage sister the most horrible names, and it was suddenly clear why my sister always hated her. One time she insisted on coming to my last ultrasound appointment with me and my dad, and I could only have one person in the room with me COVID, so she sat in the car. The appointment took around 45 minutes to an hour. When we got back to the car, I was feeling so happy over seeing my baby. It was an amazing moment, until we opened the car doors and she started literally yelling at us for taking so long. She very quickly soured a sweet moment. I could list off all the things she's done, but it's not worth it. Anyway, the place I was living in wasn't the safest. My dad let me stay at his house for almost a month, just so I wouldn't have to spend even longer in a bad environment until I closed on my house. They were even nice enough to start working on a nursery for my baby at our house, which I didn't think anything of, because his girlfriend said she wanted to watch the baby while I worked. It just seemed like excited grandparents to me. I was excited to have such a great support system during such a tough time in my life. During this time, he made it very clear he expected to be in the delivery room with me when I gave birth. He wasn't willing for it to be my mom and him because he refused to be in the same room as my mom. He was the cheater, but acted like she was the devil, so it had to be just him. Personally, I didn't like the idea of being in such a vulnerable position and being naked in front of my dad, but I was just planning to do what he wanted anyway because I always wanted a dad. So if I had to make some sacrifices to get that, then I was okay with it. Towards the end of the month, I had my baby shower and people really came together to help me. By the end of the day, I had pretty much everything I needed and more. Right after the baby shower, my dad told me he should lock the gifts into the room behind his, that they'd be safe in there. So, I agreed. I mean, he had put me through a lot when I was a kid, But even so, I could trust him not to steal from me and my unborn child, right? No. The week before I was supposed to move into my house, I called him while he was on his break at work. I was nesting pretty bad. I asked him if he could unlock the door in his bedroom when he got home, or let me know if there's another key, just so I could get the things ready to bring to my house. I wasn't adamant about it, just asked him to do it whenever he had the chance or whenever we were both free. Since I worked too, I was very polite about this. The sellers were letting me move in some of my things early, so I wanted to get a lot of the stuff done. He said nitrogen monoxide. He refused to ever let me have my things. I wish I could tell you there was some sort of trigger to this or that I saw this coming, but I didn't. It really did come out of nowhere. I thought we were good. He went on about how I probably wasn't even going to let him in the delivery room with me, had planned on it. I never told him otherwise. After he said that, I told him he'd never be in my life and that he would never meet my child or any future children I have. And I meant it. Even if he had given me my stuff back, the fact that he said he wasn't going to, at any point ... I can't have someone in my life that even considers doing that to me or my children. I went on to have my mother and my sister in the delivery room with me, and it was an incredible experience. After the whole ordeal, multiple family members told me they were glad I cut contact with him, because they were sure he was going to try to do something so I'd look bad, so he could have custody. I'm so glad I didn't trade one abuser for another by continuing to let my dad walk all over me. I've now moved to another state, living with the man of my dreams and our two children that my father has never met. Today, me and a friend from my hometown were messaging, having a conversation about our parents. She has a very good relationship with her parents. When I brought up that my father hasn't even met my children, she said I overreacted when I cut contact and I'm denying my children a bond with their grandparents. So am I the a-hole for going no contact with my father? Edit. To answer some questions. Yes, I did tell everyone who gave me gifts that their gifts were stolen. Yes, I did contact the police and the sheriff. Neither would help me. They told me I'd need to bring my father to court. I would have done that, but I had just bought a house. I couldn't afford a lawyer and I was just ready to be done with him completely. Me and my now husband got together shortly after I had my first child. He was my biggest supporter. We were longtime friends and it was a long time coming, so we got serious pretty quickly and he's raised both children as his own. Edit number 2. I couldn't break down the door or take it off its hinges. There were other people in the house, as my dad's GF doesn't work. I was 9 months pregnant and already under a lot of stress. They definitely would have called the cops if I tried to break into the room.